Well, good morning, Manhattan.
Good morning.
Today is Mother's Day, in case somehow you missed that information. Of course, if you've been to the grocery store in the last 2 months, you probably caught that. Now, this year marks 100 years since President Woodrow Wilson proclaimed it as a national holiday, even though it had already been celebrated for a while before that. And the founders of Mother's Day chose a Sunday because they wanted it to be a holy day, not just a holiday. Now, it may seem to have become quite commercialized, like I referenced. And I read somewhere that there's actually more flowers sold on Mother's Day than there is on Valentine's Day. I know, right? But the original intent of Mother's Day was to actually celebrate one's own mother. And did you know that there are Mother's Day celebrations all over the world in all sorts of different types of ways to be celebrated? And if you check out the Wikipedia on Mother's Day, it's quite fascinating if you feel like you want to do that. But today, in addition to celebrating the mothers in the world and the mothers in the room, I want to celebrate the nurturer in all of us. Now, I know traditional gender roles would like to say that men are nurturers and women, sorry, I said that backwards. See, I'm so into it that I said it backwards. Traditional roles like to say that women are the nurturers and men are the protectors, but obviously I don't think that that's true since I said it backwards. In fact, there have actually been studies, numerous scientific studies that have said that compassion is an innate quality in all of us, and there's no statistical difference in compassion between men and women. Yes. And in my own experience, I think that that's very true. So a story I didn't know until a few years ago happened, my first experience of nurturing, my very first experience. In the delivery room, my mother was having all sorts of medical complications. The doctors and the nurses were caring for her. I was letting everyone know that I was breathing just fine by screaming my head off, and my father walked back and forth in that delivery room holding me. Now, I believe that that nurturing act is part of the foundation of why my father and I always had such a deep, caring relationship. He also was a stay-at-home dad for the first year and a half of my life. Now, that nurturing connection, we go, yeah, parents, sure. But siblings, right? We'll move down the road a little bit to siblings. I know a kid, his name is Zion. He's 9 and he's a boy, and 9-year-old boys are 9-year-old boys, and he's very much like what you would think of a 9-year-old boy to be like. He's got lots of energy, and when he's having an argument with his mom, when he's having his own moment, if his baby sister, who is less than a year old, starts to cry or fuss, everything stops. And off he goes to go find out what's wrong with Fina and how can it be better. And to take it to another level, this 9-year-old boy says sometimes, hey, Mom, I'll take care of Fina for a while. Why don't you go rest? Now, it usually only lasts about half an hour, but hey, that's a great half an hour. But what about nurturing those people that we don't even know? Another friend of mine, Tiffany, and her daughter Kaylee, who's in 5th grade, were driving down the highway one day, and they came upon a few moments after an accident had happened between a semi-truck and an SUV. And Tiffany immediately pulled the car over to the side of the road and went to see what she could do to help. Now, there were a pair of grandparents driving, and they had their young grandkids in the back seat. And so Tiffany helped sweep up the kids, and she brought them over to her car and got them safe in the car so that they wouldn't be out, anywhere where they would be in danger. And Kaylee, the 5th grader, sat with these kids, comforted them, took care of them, and kept them distracted from what was going on outside of the car. Such presence of mind and compassion that she showed, while her mom was helping the adults, of course, do adulty type things. But this compassion, this love, this nurturing goes beyond the human kingdom onto the animal kingdom. Now, some of you may have seen this video. This is totally wild, and you'll have to look it up. This farm in Ireland, small farm, they decided they wanted to add some ducks to their menagerie. And so they got some fertilized duck eggs. The duck eggs hatched, and they were looking where the ducks. They had flown the coop. And so they finally see one of the ducks a few hours later, and it is in the mouth of a cat. Now, the story doesn't go where you think it's going to go, obviously, or I wouldn't be bothering to tell it to you. They go to get the duck from the cat, and they find that the cat is not holding on to the duck like to eat it. It's just carrying it. And so they follow the cat with the duck, and they find that the cat had just given birth in the last few hours to some kittens. And she had decided that these ducklings were part of her litter. And so the ducklings, because they were small and furry, just became part of the litter. And then a few days later, when the farmers decided that where the mother cat had decided to nest wasn't the best place, they decided to move them to a better place. They pick up the mama cat, and the ducks are actually hanging off of her because the ducklings had figured out how to nurse. I wouldn't have believed it if I hadn't seen it. I know. And because ducks, I guess when they're born, which is something I didn't know, when they're born, they're ready to go to forage for their own food source, and so they found food source. Good for them, right? And then later on in the video, you see the ducks have grown they grow pretty quickly, and they're following the mama cat around the farm, just like, I know. Look up the ducks and the cats on YouTube and watch the one that's like 5 minutes long. You'll love it. And one of the things that they say in the video is the reason that they postulate that this happened was that in those few hours around birth, that there's all these hormones that are released in the mama cat, and so she saw a small furry thing. Oh, must be mine, right? Instead of saying, ooh, lunch. And so mother hormones, real stuff. I know we have some moms in the room. They know mother hormones. That's the real stuff. Anecdotes tell us, studies tell us. But I want to tell you about my mom. Now, after the experience of having me, which was quite traumatic, as I shared, having another biological kid really wasn't on the table as a good choice. So my parents decided to adopt. Now, adopting a special needs kid is not for the faint of heart. It involves a lot more doctor's visits. It involves a lot more school, IEP, avocation, blah, all that, on and on and on and on. And it doesn't taper off as the kid gets older necessarily, at least not in our case. Now, my mom managed to do this while homeschooling us and running a small business. And as I got older, she was also the youth ed director at our church. Now, there was no mothering hormones that were set off in the courthouse while she was signing papers. But I wouldn't tell you that there was really any difference between her biological kid and her adopted kid. And there are many of us who have taken the role of caring for someone that they didn't birth. There are many women who nurture and care for the children of this world who don't have any of their own. And I want to take a moment to recognize these women as well, because Mother's Day can be a very difficult time for those people. To the foster moms, thank you for your care at a moment's notice for the kids who really need a safe place to be. To the aunties or surrogate aunties who take on the kid that the parent couldn't care for. To the teacher, the mentors, the teaches and loves young minds. You are infinitely important. To the scout leader, youth group sponsor, big sister, camp counselor, and coach, thank you for being the mentor, safe and support, being that safe adult that a parent, they just can't be. To the second moms, godmothers, grannies, and families of choice, thanks for being the safe place for those kids to hang out. To the stepmoms navigating often complex and complicated relationships, you are an unsung hero. To adoptive moms, you have changed a life for good. Some of us are childless by choice, and others have experienced this heartbreak of miscarriage, of infertility. Some have lost a child to violence or abortion, and we mourn with you. Some women didn't find the right partner or have some physical limitations on their ability to have a child or carry a child. Some have relinquished custody so that their child could be adopted and have a better life. And so if you are feeling sadness about this day, I want you to know that I'm holding you in my heart, and I have a hug waiting for you any moment. And I recognize and honor your bravery to be here today. And for the rest of you, I ask you to join me in lifting up these dear ones in our prayers and making sure that we choose compassionate words in caring with these people on days that cause this heartache. And let's also pause for a moment and recognize those who may be feeling sadness today because their mother maybe has recently passed on. And for those who may have complicated or hurtful relationships with their mom and don't really know how to respond to a day like today because of those complications. And you are also brave, and I have hugs for you as well. I'll take a deep breath. So let's get back to the nurturer that's in all of us. Now, the dictionary definition of nurture is to care for and encourage the growth or development of. Now, I would say, obviously, some of the people in wellness and health and wellness fields are definitely nurturers, right? And also the people, the dedicated fans and family members who keep that health and wellness going once someone is not in a medical setting. Another person who comes to mind is James Herriot, the famous veterinarian, and all veterinarians definitely are those type of people. And more personally, someone who comes to my mind when I think of a nurturer, which wouldn't be something you would automatically think of necessarily, is a man named Doug. Now, if you've been to Unity Village, which I know a lot of you have seen Doug's handiwork, because his job is to care for the flowers at Unity Village, and specifically the rose garden. Right? So now you're all like, oh yeah, we love Doug, right? And anytime from early spring through the fall when the roses are put to bed for the winter, you will find him probably in the proximity of the rose garden and the fountains. He loves what he does. He has such a gentle heart, and if you speak to him, he has so much passion and caring for these flowers. He is certainly a nurturer. Now, in the Bible, we've got all sorts of stories about nurturers and moms, right? We got Mother Mary of Jesus. We've got Sarah, who was too old to bear children. We have Rachel and Leah, the sisters who bore the 12 tribes of Israel. And I don't know, sisters having to marry the same guy might have been some interesting things going on there too. We have Elizabeth, who was the mother of John the Baptist and also the cousin of Mary. But those are all stories for another day, because today we're going to travel to the second chapter of Exodus, where the Pharaoh was getting nervous because there seemed to be quite a few Hebrews, and he wasn't sure he liked that idea. So he decided that all male babies were going to be killed, or, they couldn't live past being born. And now I haven't quite figured out why he thought that was a good idea, because where is he going to get his slaves if he doesn't have any men in 20 years? But I don't know. That obviously didn't think that far ahead. So there was a mom who had this beautiful baby boy, and she decided to, instead of doing what Pharaoh had said, that she was going to hide him. And so for 3 months, she raised him and hid him, but she realized that this was not going to last. And so she fashioned a basket and set him on the Nile. And his sister watched over to see what would happen. Well, coincidentally, of course, this is why it's in the Bible, right? This is when Pharaoh's daughter comes out to bathe in the river and sees the basket and hears some cries coming from the basket and wonders what's going on. So they bring the baby in the basket, and she decides to adopt the baby. And she sees the sister hanging around, and she sends her off to find someone to take care of the baby for her, which of course she went and got her mom. And so her mom got to take care of the baby that was actually hers, but as the Pharaoh's son. Now, I say we got two brave mothers in this story, right? The birth mom said, I'm going to save his life, and you can't imagine how scary it must have been to set him down the river, but she also knew that that was the only chance he was going to have. And it was also pretty brave to buck authority and keep him in the first place, right? And then Pharaoh's daughter, who decided to adopt him, I mean, I don't know what it was like at that time, but she probably would have gotten in a lot of trouble if Pharaoh had known that she adopted a Hebrew boy, because she knew he was Hebrew when she did that. And I don't know if pharaohs were into killing their daughters at the time, but it was a pretty brutal time, so that could be true. But she saw a baby that needed to be cared for. That's all that mattered. And she gave him the best protection he could possibly have, and that was being part of the royal family. So now that we've talked about nurturing and all these various ways that it can show up, let's talk about how we develop that spiritual tool in all of us. Now, science has proven that it's innate in all of us, right? So we're all, and some of us are probably really good at showing that, but there's always more. There's always more ways we can go, right? So I have a friend who has an analogy of relationships of being like a bank account. And so when you spend time with someone and you do caring things for one another, that's like adding deposits to your bank account of the relationship. And then you have tough times. And tough times are sort of like taking withdrawals from your bank account. And so if you want to nurture and grow your relationship with someone, right, you make deposits in it. And now there are sometimes maybe your relationship isn't a relationship you want to make any more deposits in. That's okay. That's a choice that you can make. But I also invite you to think about what relationships are really helpful to you, which relationships you would like to continue to consciously make those deposits in. Next, think about what you might want to bring forth to nurture. Now that you know what relationships, and these are not just relationships with people, these are relationships with, these could be your pets, these could be things like your time, like for me, learning to play the guitar or things like that. Those are all the things you want to nurture, right? So what other things do you want to add into your life? Like recently I added an herb garden in my kitchen. And that's something that I was like, I really wanted to do that. I mean, partly it nurtures me because I like to have the fresh herbs, but just to see the green things growing that I get to take care of in the kitchen, it makes me happy. Yeah. So those are the kind of things that we want to bring forth. And maybe you want to bring forth other things. Maybe you've been meaning to volunteer with do something. Maybe you're like, my friend could really use a break. Let me hang out with their kids for a while. Maybe these are things on your mind. What kind of things would you like to bump up your nurturing abilities? And then, of course, there's the care for yourself part of nurturing, which we all go, well, we're so busy. And I know that as good Unity students, you're probably better than your average group of people at taking care of yourself. But just in case you need a reminder, I'd like to remind you that whatever those things are that nurture you, for me, a walk in nature is a great thing. For some people, it's a bath. For other people, it's baking cupcakes. For other people, it's practicing an instrument or getting a massage, connecting with a friend, reading a novel. That's another one for me. Know what those things are that nurture you, and take the time to do it, even 15 minutes. I'm a part of a Facebook group that calls themselves One Small Step. And it's not about having some big grand plan. It's not about having to do this. It's about what's one small step I took today to increase my mental, physical, spiritual well-being. Just one small step. And so somebody posts, today while the kids played, I did laps around the playground instead of sitting. Yes, and people celebrate with her. Way to go. Another person said, it's been so crazy, I haven't gotten any steps done lately, guys. And people say, it's okay. We're cheering you on. We know you can do it. You're doing the right thing. Keep it up. And that's what we need to do. We need to have those own voices for ourselves in our own mind saying, okay, way to go. You can do it. Tomorrow's another day. All of that. And to have our communities that help us nurture ourselves and take those little steps for ourselves. So another way we can, one more self-care, nurturing type thing is to unplug. Some of you may not be the kind of people who look at screens a lot, but some of you might be, like me, people who seem to have smartphones and things always present. You know, unless you're on call at the hospital or the fire department, there's probably not anything that can't wait a few hours. Really? I mean, right? And so it's okay to just like go put it over there and just leave it over there and do something that matters. Connect with someone, read a book, go for a walk, whatever it is. Put it over there. Put it in airplane mode. Oh, goodness. You know, if you feel nervous about not having an emergency phone, put it in airplane mode, and then you're still, you know, give yourself that gift of peace of mind. So, on this Mother's Day, I invite you to celebrate the people who nurtured you. I invite you to recognize the nurturer that is in you, and to remember to always nurture yourself. And so let's move in. And so let's move into our time of meditation. So let's just take a couple deep breaths. We settle into our chairs further. Set aside anything that might be distracting us. Set aside anything in our minds that might be distracting us, and just be. We know we can pick it back up if we need to later on.